The Lane Kiffin Saga has finally come to an end. The coaching carousel has been spinning and is still spinning out of control. The first Senior Bowl invites have been accepted. We're going to talk about all of that and a whole lot more coming up next on the Draft Countdown Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's packed edition of the Draft Countdown Show. I'm your host, Brian Bussard, and we are 140 days away from the 2026 NFL Draft. And for discussions about everything that's been going on in college football, and we have been having a lot of discussions about that, go to our Discord, sign up for that, become a member. QR code right here at the top. You can scan that. There's a link down below here on this video. Or you can go to draftcountdown.com. Top right corner of the search bar, there is a link there to join our Discord. Like I said, all this madness in the coaching searches that's been going on. We've been just talking about that almost nonstop for the last few days, recruiting, all that stuff. We've been breaking it all down on the Discord. So please go sign up, get in on the conversation. We have a lot of fun with it over there. All right, this is not going to be the normal news segment this week. It's going to be talking about college football coaching, head coaches, changes, all of it. That's all we're going to talk about here in the news segment this week. And we have to start with Lane Kiffin. Like I said in the opening, the saga of that has finally come to an end. Kiffin, indeed, is leaving Ole Miss to head to their rival LSU. He requested to coach the Rebels during their playoff run, but was denied by the AD, rightfully so, in my opinion. Kiffin's done a phenomenal job in Oxford and has been one of the and now he's become one of the highest paid coaches in college football to the tune of about $13 million a year over the next 7 years. And his agent Jimmy Sexton, who's going to come up later, even got LSU to agree to pay his playoff bonuses this year if Ole Miss makes a run without him. Just hilarious. But to say that this brings out the worst in college ball, what college ball has become, the worst parts of it in the last couple of days, this is the way it is. A coach leaving a program that he built up into a potential national championship contender to go to a program that may or may not get to that level that he is. You know, I mean, he'll have all the resources and everything, but, you know, he'll be better off resource-wise. But reputation-wise, Lane's done in. And we've seen the leaks come out about stuff he said in the players, in meeting with the players. But the players have universally come out saying, no, Hoss, that ain't what you said. So, or that ain't what was said. Just a whole lot of seems to be a lot of garbage coming out of it. Lane Kiffin doesn't look good in any of it at all. But he's got money now, a lot more money now at a much more high-profile program with LSU. Good luck to him. We'll see where it goes. Ole Miss, though, to their credit, acted quickly to try to salvage this whole deal, and they promoted defense coordinator Pete Golding to head coach. Golding's headed up one of the top defenses in the SEC, in his 3 years in Oxford. Alt was former defense coordinator at Alabama as well under Saban. Looks like most of the offensive coaching staff that are headed to LSU are going to coach the playoffs, coach the playoff games. So we'll see how that goes with, I guess Charlie Weiss Jr. is going to call the plays. The quarterback's coach came back, all that stuff. But, yeah. Another college football playoff contender, Tulane, going to be looking for a new head coach as well. They, John Summer, their head coach, John Sumrall, leaving the Green Wave to take over the reins in Gainesville. He was 42-11 over his 4 seasons as a head coach between Troy and Tulane. He gets a 6-year deal valued at around $7.5 million a year. It's expected that Sumrall will coach Tulane in not only the American Championship game this Saturday against North Texas, but a playoff game should they win. Or playoff games, I guess, you have to put that in there in case they pull off the upset. But Tulane on the look for a new coach. Florida's also finalizing a deal that's going to bring David Caldwell to be the general manager for the Gators. Caldwell is the former GM for the Jacksonville Jaguars, currently works with the Eagles organization. From everything we've gathered here, the sourcing and all that, it's expected to be a similar situation to the one in Oklahoma, with Brent Venables being the head coach, and the coaches basically run the advanced scouting, coach the players, all that. But Jim Nagy, the former executive director of the Senior Bowl, is fully in charge of personnel. And the situation in Florida is expected to be similar with that, with Caldwell in charge of personnel, and Sumrall, running the rest of the show. Texas Tech has a similar situation with their head coach Joey McGuire and their GM there as well. Auburn has hired South Florida head coach Alex Golesh to be its next head coach. The former Tennessee offensive coordinator led a turnaround in Tampa, now tasked with revitalizing the Auburn offense. He retained interim head coach and defensive coordinator DJ Durkin to continue running the defense. Defense wasn't the issue with Auburn this year. It was the offense. Golesh bringing a more up-tempo style offense to Auburn, and we'll see how that pairs with Durkin's defense. And what I thought was a surprising move, this came out today as we record this, and I should note, let's break in right now and just note this, that I'm recording this at 4:45 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday. So all this information that I'm presenting to you today is accurate as of 4:45 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon. Anything that breaks after this, we will get to next week. We'll follow back up on it next week. So back to anyway. But this morning, it was announced that South Florida is replacing Golesh with Ohio State offensive coordinator Brian Hartline. Kind of surprised. I thought Hartline might be, in line for maybe a power 4 job in this cycle, but instead he takes over South Florida, which is one of the more heavily funded group of 5, group of 6. I guess it'll be 6 next year once the Pac-12 returns. But Hartline is a tremendous recruiter, one of the best wide receiver developers in the country. I mean, Ohio State's had, a first-round wide receiver drafted each of the last 4 or 5 drafts when he's been the wide receiver coach there. They're going to have another one probably this year with Carnell Tate. They're definitely going to have another one next year with Jeremiah Smith. And he is generally considered to get the credit for developing that wide receiver room. So I love this hire for South Florida. He was a first-year play caller this year at Ohio State. So we'll see how that goes and how he delegates. But, yeah, this feels like a big-time win for the Bulls. Arkansas hiring Memphis head coach Ryan Silverfield to run the show in Fayetteville. Silverfield was 22-9 over the last 3 years with the Tigers. I like this hire for Arkansas. The Arkansas fans, not so much on board with this one. Kentucky fired head coach Mark Stoops after 13 seasons. Stoops was 82-80 in his time at UK. His Wildcat career ends after a 41-0 loss to their rival Louisville last week. But they wasted absolutely no time. Almost like a day after Stoops was fired, they hired Oregon offense coordinator Will Stein to take his place. Stein's a Kentucky native and a tremendous quarterback developer. Basically resurrected Bo Nix when he transferred from Auburn to Oregon, turned Dylan Gabriel into a third-round pick last year, and has been the key in the progression of current Oregon quarterback Dante Moore's ascension to what, should he declare, probably a first-round pick this year at quarterback. So Will Stein deserves all that credit there. It's quarterback development. We'll see what he does as the head man in charge of Kentucky. He isn't the only coordinator Dan Lanning's losing. Defensive coordinator Tosh Lupoy is going to return to his alma mater and take over the program at Cal. They have Ron Rivera is basically their GM type guy there, and Lupoy will answer to him or will work directly with him on developing that Cal program. Their biggest sell right now is trying to keep Jaron Kioe Sagapolatelli at quarterback. That dude's great as a true freshman this year. He's going to be one to watch draft wise. I guess 2028 for the 2028 draft, but he's been great this year. Michigan State fired their head coach Jonathan Smith, went 9-15 in his 2 seasons in East Lansing, including a 1-8 Big Ten record this year. He was owed a $33 million buyout on his way out the door, and they also wasted no time and announced that they are hiring former Northwestern head coach Pat Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald, the last couple of years at Northwestern worked great, but he did win 110 games there. He was fired in July of 2023 from Northwestern due to hazing allegations within the program. Although an investigation found there was no sufficient evidence that the coaching staff knew about the hazing, the university president later reversed that decision after more details of misconduct emerged, saying that Fitzgerald should have known better about the widespread and egregious hazing that involved sexualized acts and forced participation. But it should be noted that it was later revealed that Fitzgerald indeed did not know about the misconduct. So he was, I guess, exonerated of that. There's no exonerated, it's not the right word, because it wasn't, actually criminal charges brought up. But anyway, Fitzgerald is now the head coach at Michigan State, back running a team in the Big Ten. Speaking of teams in the Big Ten, maybe they shouldn't be, another story for another day, but UCLA is hiring James Madison head coach Bob Chesney to its top post. Chesney 20-5 in his 2 seasons at James Madison, where his team has a shot at making the college football playoff if Duke beats Virginia in the ACC championship game and JMU beats Troy in the Sun Belt game. We're going to see 2 group of 5 teams get auto bids to the playoff. The winner of the AAC game between Tulane and North Texas and James Madison are both going to get in over a 5-loss Duke team who has no business playing in a conference championship game. So, but if James Madison makes the playoffs and they make any sort of run, UCLA is going to allow him to coach in those games. And but prior to his time at James Madison, Chesney was also very successful at the FCS level at Holy Cross. In a move announced today that kind of came completely out of left field, nobody really saw this one coming. Kansas State head coach Chris Kleiman announced he was retiring, stepping away for personal reasons, health reasons, such of that nature. The former North Dakota State coach, where he won multiple national titles and was successful at Kansas State as well, stepping down. It was announced he will be replaced by former Kansas State quarterback beloved figure in Manhattan, Kansas, and current Texas A&M offensive coordinator Colin Klein will be the new head coach at Kansas State. Colorado State hired UConn head coach Jim Mora Jr. to lead its program into the new Pac-12. Mora revitalized the Huskies program this year, where I believe they won 9 games, 9-3 this year. He looks to do the same with the Rams. Colorado State, I mentioned earlier that South Florida was one of the higher funded group of 6 teams. Colorado State is right up at the top of that list as well. Oregon State has hired Alabama co-offensive coordinator and wide receiver coach Jamarcus Shepard as its new head coach. Shepard coached with Caleb DeBoer at Washington, then followed him to Alabama, so he's got some West Coast ties. We'll see how he does. He's never called plays. Never been a full-time coordinator, so a risk for Oregon State here, but we'll see. With Eric Morris off to Oklahoma State, North Texas has tabbed former West Virginia and Troy head coach Neil Brown to take over their team that, like I said, also has a chance to be a college ball playoff team. Morris will coach North Texas during the duration of their season. Brown was 35-16 while at Troy, took over West Virginia where he went 37-35. Stanford has hired Washington Commanders quarterback coach Tavita Pritchard to be their head coach. Pritchard was on the Cardinal staff in many different roles from 2010 to 2022, including offensive coordinator. He was also in the same quarterback room with Andrew Luck while he was at Stanford. Luck is now the GM at Stanford, so if you're looking to tie those connections together. Coastal Carolina fired their head coach, Tim Beck. Beck was 20-18 in 3 seasons at Coastal Carolina. That included 2 bowl games with 1 pending coming up this year. A little surprised by this one, to be honest. You don't generally see these smaller schools pull the trigger that quick. But although they did lose their last 2 games this year by a combined 110-17 against South Carolina and James Madison. Their defense coordinator, Jeremiah Johnson, will coach the bowl game this year. Southern University has hired NFL Hall of Fame running back Marshall Faulk as its next head coach. The New Orleans native returns home to lead their program. Faulk was on Deion Sanders' staff this year at Colorado, I believe, as their running backs coach. He joins Michael Vick who's at Norfolk State, Deshaun Jackson, who's at Delaware State, and Eddie George, who's at Tennessee State, as former NFL stars becoming head coaches at HBCU schools. Of course, Deion Sanders seemingly started this trend at Jackson State a few years ago before he took a Colorado job. And lastly, I bring up Penn State here as they were one of the first ones to fire their coach when they fired James Franklin. And as of press time here, they have still not gotten a coach. They've gotten a lot of other head coaches raises. And there's a lot of talk out there that basically this is college football coach super agent Jimmy Sexton sabotage going on here with the Penn State search. James Franklin is a Jimmy Sexton client, and he seems hell-bent on just suffocating the Penn State coaching search at every turn. It seems every candidate that was brought up that had any ties to this Penn State job have gotten a raise where they are. Brent Key, Eli Drinkwitz, Clark Lee, amongst others. Kalani Sataki at BYU, I don't think he's a Sexton client, but he got a raise. Bob Chesney, who is a Sexton client, got the job, took the job at UCLA, and just on and on and on. Jeff Brom was the latest Louisville's head coach. Got a raise today as well, who was a name that was tied, or maybe not. He didn't get a raise, but he said that he was staying at Louisville. Was probably going to get a raise though. So it's the sun's getting real low on Penn State. Today was the early signing period, which has basically become the almost de facto signing day in recent years. And Penn State currently has 2 players signed, I think. Their current recruiting rankings is somewhere around 148 or 150. They're below McNeese State, who's in the Southland Conference in the FCS. It ain't good, man. It ain't good at all. I don't honestly know where they're going to turn. I mean, maybe they just end up having to promote the interim head coach. I don't know, man. It's not good for Penn State and their fan base. And AD Pat Kraft has shit the bed on this one for sure. But that's a lot of coaching stuff we've talked about. We'll almost guaranteed talk about more this time next week. But man, what a wild week it's been. All right, let's transition back over to the NFL draft and let's look at how our top 10 draft order is looking this week. Had a little shakeup in the top 10 this week. Not a whole lot, not monumental shakeups like we could have this week with the Titans and the Browns playing each other. But speaking of the Titans, they've lost 7 games in a row now, and they are still at the top, 1-11. The Giants, who will have their bye week finally this week, after getting just humiliated on Monday Night Football by the Patriots, they've lost 7 games in a row. They're 2-11. Third pick right now belongs to the New Orleans Saints at 2-10. They have the same record as the Las Vegas Raiders, who currently pick 4th, also at 2-10. Raiders have lost 6 games in a row. The Cleveland Browns lead a 4-pack of teams at 3-9. They're currently picking 5th. The Washington Commanders, who have also lost 7 games in a row, are picking 6th right now. The New York Jets, fresh off a win over the Falcons, they're up to 3-9 now, and they're picking 7th. The Arizona Cardinals, also 3-9, picking 8th. The Los Angeles Rams, currently on the 9th pick, thanks to the Atlanta Falcons and that aforementioned loss to the Jets, are picking 9th. They're the highest of the 4-8 teams, along with the Cincinnati Bengals, who beat the Ravens on Thanksgiving night, and the Minnesota Vikings, who are also 4-8 and have lost 4 games in a row. The Dolphins have won 3 games in a row. They're playing their stuff out of the top 10 right now. We'll see how they finish, but that's top 12. Kansas City currently picking 13th at 6-6, along with Pittsburgh at 14, Carolina 15, Dallas 16, Detroit and Houston are the next 2 teams not currently in the playoffs. But the Titans and the Browns play this week. We'll see how that goes. All right. Now let's go into what will become a recurring segment for at least the next month or so. Who has accepted Senior Bowl invites this week? And the Senior Bowl, new sponsor this year, Panini, replacing Reese's. Us media folk, not happy about that, but hey, it's probably better for the old health that I don't eat nonstop Reese's cups for 4 straight days or whatever. But we've currently got 16 players that have accepted Senior Bowl invites this week, and a lot of them seemingly from the same schools. But we'll see. Arkansas has got a 4-pack of players coming to Mobile, or that have accepted invites to come, I should say. We won't say they're here until they're here, right? But let's start with their quarterback, Taylon Green, who I think is a high upside potential quarterback in this draft class, probably going to be a day 3 developmental pick, but he's got the tools, the physical tools. So we'll see how that goes. Could be a big week for him down here. Their running back, Mike Washington's been very explosive this year. He's accepted an invite, along with their offensive tackle, Fernando Carmona, and their defensive tackle, Cameron Ball. So 4 Arkansas players this week, 3 from Baylor, including their quarterback, Sawyer Robertson, who I think has a shot at being a day 2 pick, potentially. at the quarterback position. He's another one. I think that it really depends on how many quarterbacks go back to school. If we see Sawyer Robertson can make a push up the board. The highest probably graded player I'll have for Baylor is their tight end, Michael Trigg, who's a tremendous athlete, great catch radius. Not the most refined tight end, I'll say that. But I think he's a top 100 player right now, and I think he'll look great in those one-on-one drills. And their receiver, Josh Cameron, also announced. He's a guy I did not have on my radar. I will have to go back and watch a little Baylor tape to get familiar with Josh Cameron. Georgia Tech interior offensive lineman Keelan Rutledge has accepted his invite. A pair of Kansas State players, interior offensive lineman Sam Hecht and safety VJ Payne, have accepted invites to come to Mobile. Punter Ryan Eckley from Michigan State, the first specialist on the board here. Really like Missouri edge rusher Zion Young, one of the better pass rushers in the SEC this season. Young has accepted his invite. Deshaun Singleton, safety from Nebraska, will be coming down here. Wide receiver Romello Brinson, another wide receiver I'm going to have to get some study in on the SMU product. Romello Brinson accepts his invite. Tight end DJ Rogers from TCU will be heading to Mobile. And Tennessee nickel corner Jalen McMurray accepts his invite. One of the better nickel corners in the Southeastern Conference this year. But that's 16 players accepted invites to the Senior Bowl this week. All right, let's look back at Week 14, rivalry weekend in college ball last week. We watched 8 games last week, so a lot of good performances to sift through this past week. So let's talk about the best prospect performances from the past week, and we have to start with Penn State running back Katron Allen. Before the season, Nick Singleton got all the hype, but Katron Allen has been the better running back for the Nittany Lions this year against Rutgers this past week. 22 carries for 226 yards, 1 touchdown. He also caught a pair of passes for 12 yards, and leading the Nittany Lions to bowl eligibility. Nick Singleton, to his credit, also had 9 carries for 86 yards in this game, 2 catches for 23, and he had 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. The other best performance I saw this week, though, was from Ole Miss quarterback Trinidad Chambliss, the transfer up from D2 Ferris State, who got the start at Ole Miss about 4 games into the season after starting quarterback Austin Simmons got hurt and never let go of the job. Chambliss was 23 of 34 for 359 and 4 touchdowns in the Egg Bowl. He also had 26 yards rushing. Chambliss, allegedly going to apply for another year of eligibility. We'll see if he gets it. I don't know if that's going to work out for him or not. It's trying to claim medical hardship on one of those seasons. We'll see. But if he enters this draft class, I think he ends up getting drafted somewhere on day 3. He's undersized, obviously, but, has shown enough to warrant a look. Best defensive performance I saw this week was from BYU linebacker Jack Kelly. 6 tackles, 2 sacks, and a forced fumble in their blowout win over UCF. Also, Indiana defensive tackle Stephen Daly had 6 tackles. 5 of those were solos. 4.5 were for loss. He had a sack and a forced fumble in their blowout win over Purdue. Also, I talked about him briefly last week. I think he's going to be a hell of a slot guy at the NFL. Whether he gets drafted or as a UDFA, he's got a tremendous return specialist as well. But Cal wide receiver Jacob DeJesus had 12 catches for 97 yards and a touchdown in their upset win over SMU. All right, it is championship week in college football, the last week of the regular season, and 4 games on the docket for us this week, mostly because I already watched Alabama and Georgia play in the regular season, as well as Texas Tech and BYU. So I didn't want to repeat those games viewing wise. So I figured I'd get a couple of the lesser games as well. But so we start on Friday night, 6 o'clock on ESPN. It is the Sun Belt Conference Championship game. Troy travels to play James Madison. Mentioned earlier, James Madison has a shot at the college football playoff for winning this game. Need Duke to beat Virginia. But there's not a whole lot of NFL prospecting in this game. Couple wide receivers to keep an eye on, though, for Troy. Former Mississippi State and Georgia wide receiver Ra Thomas has caught 31 balls for 495 and 5 touchdowns on the year. For the Dukes, Maryland and Richmond transfer Nick Gennaro. Modest stats this year, but height, weight, speed guy, projects as a priority undrafted free agent, accepted an invite to the newly formed American Bowl. We'll see him as well. James, also a player to watch in this one, James Madison running back Wayne Knight. He's rushed for 1,051 yards this season and has return skills as well. Friday night, 7 p.m. on Fox is the Mountain West Conference Championship game between UNLV and they're at Boise State. How we got to these two teams playing this game is just a complete cluster. A bunch of computer bull crap led us to this. Kept us from getting New Mexico in this game, which that's what the people wanted, by God. But we've talked about Boise State offensive tackle Cage Casey before. He's clearly, I believe, the top prospect in this game. But the DBs are where the focus should be for prospect watching in this game. For Boise State, cornerbacks Amarian McCoy and Jeremiah Irby, 4 picks apiece this year. Irby, 8 pass breakups as well. While McCoy has returned 2 picks for touchdowns. UNLV's got a pair of cornerbacks also with 4 picks each. That's Amaris Brown. We've talked about him before. And with Terrence Welch. Brown's got 2 touchdowns from those interceptions as well, and he's also broken up 7 passes. 11 a.m. on ESPN on Saturday, the MAC championship game. This one's played in Detroit, Ford Field. Miami of Ohio will play Western Michigan. The focus in this one's going to be on a pair of undersized pass rushers for Western Michigan. That edge, Nadeem Tucker, has wreaked havoc on the MAC this year. After playing very little at Houston in 3 seasons, he emerged this year, 18 tackles for loss. He got 12 sacks and 4 forced fumbles in 2025. For the Red Hawks, their edge, Adam Trick, has 12.5 tackles for loss on the year with 8.5 sacks. And finally, the probably, I guess, biggest game of the weekend, if you will, 7 p.m. on Fox, the Big Ten championship game from Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. Indiana against Ohio State. And before we delve into the prospects from this game, I just want to discuss how Indiana head coach Curt Cignetti has basically ruined it for every other coach taking over a program. He's 23-2 through his not yet completed 2 seasons in Indiana. The 2 best seasons ever in school history. Cignetti's also got more wins in 2 seasons, less than 2 seasons, than 21 of the 29 other coaches who have ever been head coaches at Indiana. Mike Schumann of the Daily Hoosier with those stats. Hat tip to him. All at a program that you wouldn't think would have the resources that a majority of the other Power 4 schools have. Now, maybe they do now. Maybe they, started investing heavily. But yeah. So, yeah. But back to the prospects in this game. The word of the day here may be defensive back play, as we talked about in the other game. But Indiana corners Amir Farrell and D'Angelo Pons and safety Lewis Moore. They're going to be tasked with trying to cover Ohio State wide receivers Carnell Tate, who's probably going to be a first-round pick, as I mentioned earlier, Jeremiah Smith, who's going to be a top 5 pick next year, and Max Clare, the tight end, who could be a top 100 pick this year. Flip side of that, the Buckeye corners, Davison Igbenison and Jermaine Matthews Jr., they got to stop Indiana wide receivers Omar Cooper and Elijah Surratt, who both could be top 100 picks this year, depending on how things shake out. both teams are likely going to have a first round bye in the playoffs. So from that perspective, it's not really meaningful as far as the grand scheme of things. College football playoff. SEC game has a bit more stakes especially in regard with Alabama. But the winner of this game is going to be the number 1 seed in the college football playoff. So that wraps up the Week 15 primer. All right, because I knew we had a loaded show this week, I asked that we weren't going to take any questions this week in the Q&A segment, but that will return next week. That I can promise you. And if you want to get your questions answered next week in this segment, you got to join the Discord. This is a Discord exclusive segment of the show. Scan that QR code right there. Click the link down below or go to draftcountdown.com, top right corner of the search bar to join the Discord there. Go to the podcast section of the Discord, ask a question there. I will answer it on the show each and every week. But, whole lot happening this week, so we had to 86 that from the show this week. But we'll be back next week answering your questions. All right, final thoughts this week. I just want to state that I never want to hear jack shit about a college football player transferring, taking money to go elsewhere, or sitting out a bowl game ever again. Don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. The Lane Kiffin deal has told us this week in glowing neon lights that it's perfectly okay for a head coach to shop himself around while in the middle of the best season in that school's history and then threaten to burn it all down if he didn't get his way on the way out the door. So miss me with any bullshit about a 19 or 20-year-old player being selfish for looking out for his own best interests when the supposed adults in the room pull that stuff off and don't get punished for it. So, like I said, I don't want to hear it again. And with that being said, good luck to Lenore Sellers. May your next school buy you a proper offensive line and pair you with a brain-functioning offensive coordinator. That's going to do it for this week's show. As always, if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button, like our videos, share them out with everybody. We continue to try to grow this channel, grow this show, and just grow the community here at Draft Countdown. We're putting out great content each and every week. Coming up Friday, we're basically, so you'll be able to keep up with all the players that are invited to the top all-star games. You're going to be able to do that at Draft Countdown coming up on Friday. We're going to continue to pump out fantasy content into the off season. Once the regular season ends in the fantasy world, I believe Brad's going to shift over to more dynasty focused content, tying it in with the draft. We'll go full draft mode, but Brad's also been posting, doing team specific mock drafts. Leave in the comment if you want Brad to do a mock draft for your team. Just let us know what team. We'll do it. He's done 3 or 4 so far. I think Brown's coming up this week. So yeah, you're going to want to go to draftcountdown.com daily between now and whenever, man, because it's balls to the wall draft from here on out. All right, so that's going to do it. Again, subscribe, like videos, all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys next time.